Hello, Temple. Good morning. Well, Access Bank released its results late yesterday. How is the market viewing that result? And shortly before we came on air, I noticed that Wema Bank also came up with their own results.
Yeah, so great. These numbers came in, Access Bank precisely came in yesterday toward the close of the market yesterday. And it looks quite impressive for traders, for investors generally. Of course, for the greater part of the second quarter, third quarter of this year, which this number actually really represents. We've seen so much of buying sentiment on Access Bank, and we saw a bit of exit. But let's look at the 9 months first, where we've got the gross earnings settling up by some 2.7%, and you got it moving from 365.1 billion naira in the base year to 375.2 billion naira for this year. That's in terms of year-on-year performance now. And if you look at the profit before tax, it also declined by some 3.62%. But then take a look at the net profits there after tax. You've got 11.55% increase. That's some 56. Moving from 56.4 billion naira to 62.9 billion naira for the periods that we're reviewing. And if you also look at the earnings per share, it rose from 2.0 to now 2.2. That's some 2 naira 20 kobo there, and that's like a movement of some 10.66%. But in terms of what we have about the statement of financial position, what we know so far is that this also looks positive, except in terms of the total equity. Remember that Access Bank had some rights issue some times ago, and for the total equity, we got it declining by some 6.44%. But if you look at other indicators like the cash level, total assets, total liabilities, they're really looking positive. 4.08 billion naira for the total liabilities right now, which actually rose this period by some 34.4%. You know that a lot of the banking sector in recent time have been having challenges growing their loan books. So this is part of the reason why this is not in the good zone now, but rose some 34.4%. So they're looking at, mitigating the risk and the challenges that will be attending to the banking operations for them. Now you got fees and commissions. We're yet to digest that. You've got the net interest income. We're yet to really look at that because, again, the numbers just came in yesterday, and we're expecting that the conference call will be taking place any moment from now. But if you look at the standalone performance for the Q3, that's quarter 3 2018, the performance in terms of statement of comprehensive income, you got the gross revenue up by some 3.14%. You got the profit before tax up by 17.08% at 24.4 billion naira, and the profit after tax is now 23.3 billion naira, moving away from 16.9 billion naira that we had in terms of quarter-on-quarter, rising some 37.49%. If you take a look at the share performance over a period of 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, that number looks to be in the negative territory. But by the time we get the outcome of the conference call that will be held with analysts, we should be able to get some more details. Chimeze, that's the much we know so far about Access Bank, which came in late yesterday.
I'm sure we'll still have to be keeping a tab on some other earnings coming from the banking sector, like we have Wema Bank this morning. We really don't have the full details. Anyway, what's the market like yesterday?
So we got investors starting the market bullish yesterday. It was a positive entry to the new week. You got the index rising by some 37 basis points, settling at 32,962.82, which tells you something about the month-to-date performance, and that's quite positive now because it moved back into the positive territory by some 0.6%. But if you also look at the year-to-date returns, that loss now trims to to some 13.81%. So that looks to be a bit positive. It looks like we're going to get the key benchmark index back into the 33,000 psychological line after the trading session today, because it looks like the buying sentiment is on the high side right now as a lot of the companies continue to release their earnings. Zenith Bank rose by 4.8% yesterday. It was one of the major reasons why we saw the banking sector pushing up some 47 basis points. And for the consumer goods sector, Unilever, that rose some 8%, was also one of the major push that we saw there. It was able to help the consumer goods sector to rise by some 39 basis points. The only segment of the market that was down yesterday is industrial goods sector, and that's as a result of the 10% decline that we saw on WAPCO PLC, because investors continue to sell off as a result of the poor earnings that came in for the Q3 this year. That's not something that is impressive. Investors are not pleased with that, and it doesn't look like the Q4 2018 is going to be positive either. So they're kind of deferring the benefits, the dividends, and whatever level of profit is anticipated till 2019, given the kind of estimates that a lot of the analyst firms have now released. Insurance goods sector was also positive yesterday as a result of the movements we saw on Custodian Insurance PLC, that we saw a whole lot of buying interest, and oil and gas as a result of the movement we got on Seplat PLC, which moved some 4.86% yesterday. I should say that in the banking sector, we saw that Guarantee Trust Bank experienced the highest level of activity in the market yesterday, but the price declined by 82 basis points. In spite of the fact that we had some 74 million units of shares traded across that counter, and it accounted for some 2.71 billion naira yesterday in the market. Basically, we saw investors going for value-oriented stocks yesterday. You got the volume of transactions in terms of activity level now very, very positive by some 21.29% when you compare to what we had on Friday. And you look at the value came in at 4.95 billion naira, and that's a rise of some 239% in the market. All of this was executed in 3,178 deals, basically. And this takes us, of course, to the energy markets, where things are not looking really shapy for a lot of the oil and gas stocks. There, Corn Oil is one of the major companies, one of the first firms to release its earnings into the market this period, but we haven't really seen much of investor sentiments towards that. Albeit we got a 17,367 units of its shares traded yesterday. There was no movement in its share price. Forte Oil positive yesterday, 1.74%, after investors did some 710,313 units there, but then the share price is at 20 naira 50 kobo. That is one of the major companies that is fond of releasing its earnings early in this market. So I think the kind of traction we're seeing right now on Forte Oil is as a result of preparation or preparatory grants towards the release of its earnings. Let's go to a couple of other stocks that actually released their earnings or that had some movements in their prices. We got O&O, which has been trading around the 5 naira 10 kobo region in recent times, moving yesterday away from that level of stagnancy to up by some 288 basis points, having seen some 1.8 million units of its shares traded yesterday. If you look at Total, it was unchanged, but we saw some tradings. But then Japol, which had some 3.09 million units of its shares traded, didn't move at all. It was trading at 21 kobo. Now, in terms of the NASD O2C, I understand the NASD O2C is having a bit of upgrade in its website, moving away from the private hosting level to some GoDaddy level. That's some kind of standard level, so that's why we couldn't get the numbers. But let's go to the FMDQ O2C, the secondary market, where you've also got numbers not going to be showing on your screen, but you should see something that represents the business level. The bullish sentiment yesterday in terms of the bond market, we got a positive outing. Average yields fell by some 4 basis points to 14.95% from the levels we saw on Friday, where it was 14.99%, closing, getting so close to 15%. We got demands being concentrated at the short end of the curve by some 14 basis points expansion. Of course, yields on the June 2019 security, where we saw more demands, accounted for this 33 basis points decline or contraction. that we saw on that particular security, which we know that investors have really had more interest in. But there was a bit of sell-off on the February 2028 security. I guess that will be the 23rd of February 2028 security, because that's one particular security that investors are fond of exchanging a lot of transactions. It was actually up yesterday as a result of the sell-off by some 6 basis points, as well as the March 2037 security, where we saw a rise in its yield, leading to some kind of expansion at the medium side of the curve, which was by some 2 basis points up, and of course at the long end of the curve, marginally 1 basis point. In terms of the fixed income market, in terms of the treasury bills market, I beg your pardon, bullish trading yesterday was very bullish proceeding for a lot of the securities there. We got average yields now moderating by some 9 basis points to, of course, 13.44%. You got yields contracting at the short end of the curve by 19 basis points. The mid-level contracted again by some 5 basis points too. In terms of the yields, expanded at the long end of the curve. We saw that moving by some 2 basis points at the curve. That follows the sell-off that we saw at the 332-day to maturity. There was a bit of numbers that came as to the level of investments that the federal government had in terms of PFA assets in the fixed income side of the market, but we understand some 5.7 trillion naira has been invested so far in securities out of the 8.3 trillion naira worth of pension assets that we have in Nigeria. We should have some time to talk about that sometimes on the program, Chimeze.